Alright, so, hello. Thank you for the really great response on the last cast on crit ice spear video. Figured I'd do a follow-up here since I was contacted by a person on Reddit named Fubgun who had some ideas with giving the build more elemental mitigation, which is one of the areas where I feel the build was lacking a bit. If you looked at the last path of building setup, it was actually fairly low in the elemental mitigation department. So they had an idea on how to fix that, and we basically spent a few hours last night workshopping it and theory crafting up how to set it up best, and basically it spiraled out of control kind of, and now there's been a lot of small changes that have sort of amassed into a big almost a different approach to the build, almost, but it's just like tiny things that, you know, amassed up into a big thing. So I figured I'd make a video covering it because I think they're all really cool. So the major thing that you may have noticed is that we have switched our flasks around. So we are now running the full Topaz Ruby Sapphire setup. So Topaz, our Ruby Flask is a Dying Sun, so we replace the Bottle Faith with Dying Sun to get the Ruby Flask for the less fire damage taken, and we use now a Sapphire and Topaz Magic Flask for the less lightning and cold damage taken. So these all get multiplied by our Flask effect and give close to 50% mitigation in all three of these different damage types, and it's very, very strong. So in order to fit these in, we have dropped both the Diamond Flask and the Bottle of Faith, and this might confuse you because we are dropping a lot of crit chance, and this is mainly the reason why I never actually tried doing this myself, because I figured the crit chance just wouldn't be able to recover from dropping that much crit chance, because you'd have to just, you know, swap gems around and it'll lose a lot of damage. And yes, this has lost us some damage, but less than you think, I imagine. The main cost of this is that now we have to run increased crit strikes in our cast on crit setup instead of awakened cold damage. So you're losing out on that support gem, which I will say is about 5 to 6 million damage overall. And that sounds like a lot, but considering the fact that we do like 60 million damage still, I think it's totally fine. We still melt everything in the game, and the amount of just pure defenses we gain from this is massive, and I really, really like it. It feels a lot more comfortable to play. If you want to, you know, numbers for comparison, basically we went from having about 20 to 30k in elemental mitigation in the three different elements to now I think we have 180 in each one. So that's like a massive increase. It's about like 600%, very big, and it's very noticeable and nice. So how did we fit this in? Obviously, just a single increased crit strikes gem from anyone who's, you know, played around with the setup, that's not enough to crit cap us without a Diamond Flask and a Bottle of Faith. So we are running a setup where we put Ice Golem in our cost priest this time. So that basically means that we have perma uptime on Ice Golem, since it just gets recast all the time, so it dying isn't a problem, and we get the 30% increased crit strike chance from that, and we also get 30% increased accuracy from it. And with Anomalous you get even more because it gives you extra buff effect, and this has been really nice. So this has a couple of rippling effects, right? So this causes us to be able to drop our Unnatural Instinct, because Unnatural Instinct gave us 36 accuracy, and without this, with the Ice Golem now, which with Anomalous Ice Golem at 20 quality, it gives exactly 36 accuracy as well. So basically that just removes all the gain that we got from the Unnatural Instinct, which lowers the value of it quite a bit, and can more easily make it justifiable to drop it for a regular jewel, which is what I've done. So you still need Corrupted Blood immunity somewhere, and with this setup we're actually not running any unique jewels anymore, so it can be kind of tough to fit that in. But so this jewel slot is going to be a bit scuffed. You can see that this jewel isn't really the best. It has no ES or anything like that on it, but still think it's worth it. Quite a bit of damage boost from this, and we also free up some attack speed. So we no longer get all the free attack speed from this, which means that we can also run a faster cost priest, which is nice for the extra attack rate. And we can swap out our other medium projectile cluster, which if you paid attention last video, I had this as a... I had another node here which didn't have attack speed on it because I was attack speed capped. I was at the ceiling. But now since I'm not, we can switch back to this one, which deals more damage, and that's very nice. And since we're also doing this, we are, well, so there's a cost to losing a Natural Instinct, right? And I think the biggest cost to losing it is the loss of these 3 movement speed nodes right here. So it's a judgment call. It depends on how much you value that. Personally, since I'm only pretty much doing simulacrums most of the time, I don't really value these too highly because you don't need that much movement speed for that content. But if you want to be doing, you know, really fast mapping, you might still want to keep it in here. It still does give you a lot of attack speed and some dex. It gives you about 15 dex and, you know, quite a bit of movement speed. So it's still not a bad jewel. You can keep it if you want. I chose not to because I think getting some of the more pure damage stuff is kind of nice. So another thing you may notice with the build is that we have a lot more mana now. So we have 62 unreserved mana. Two reasons for this, one more funny than the other. So let's start with the less funny one. I swapped to an anomalous precision, which basically gives you, just straight up gives you 20% increased reservation efficiency. I think this results in like 10-ish free mana that we gain. So that would have put us to like 19-ish unreserved mana. So where am I getting the last 40? The eagle-eyed of you may have spotted this in the last video, but I always have had my Molten Shell cast some damage taken increased duration set up in the boot slot. Now this is also the slot that I put Aspect of the Spider on. A little to my knowledge, Aspect of the Spider actually has a duration tag, so increased duration actually applied to the Aspect of the Spider and increased its reservation cost, which basically ate up 40 mana, more or less. So that's something. I thought that was pretty funny. That's just some really like POE minutia I would have never noticed. And props to Fubgun for letting me know that. But yes, so if you're running either of these setups, just move the Mortal Shell setup. If you want to use increased duration, move it to like the gloves or the helmet, and you're fine. I just happened by happenstance to have both the Aspect of the Spider on the exact one piece of gear that I couldn't have it on. Unlucky, but since we now have 60 increased, or since we now have 60 unreserved mana, as I mentioned in the last video, we can drop a ringcraft. So we don't actually, with the flask suffix of reduced mana cost, we can easily sustain, as long as we have some unreserved mana, with just the flask craft and the ring craft and the inspiration. And we don't need both ring crafts. So I've dropped that. This should actually be added cold damage. I wasted an exalt for nothing, because they're pretty much equivalent in damage, but you know how it is. Can't be smart all the time, or any of the time. But yes, so that means we're back to spending mana. Our things are no longer completely free, which is actually a good thing. So our Vortex, as you can see right here, costs 9 mana. Our Frost Bomb costs 3 mana, and importantly, and I'll mention why it's important here in a bit, our Ice Golem, which, if we can find it, there it is. Our Ice Golem costs 26 mana, so that's quite a lot, but it casts infrequently enough to where we can still support it with our mana. I've tried it on several maps and simulacrums, and I've never gone so I think we're good. But that means that since we're now spending mana, our Ascendancy is once again active. So if you look at the Occultist Ascendancy, we now get increased power charge, or we gain a power charge after spending a total of 200 mana, which lets us now have power charges on a single target without using the power charge on crit setup in the Cosplays. So that's where I put the Ice Golem. Now, I've made another change to the cosplay setup. Now, this might be a bit controversial, but this was also Fubgun's idea originally, and I quite like it. So we can put Arcane Surge in here. Since we are spending mana on both these spells, it always triggers Arcane Surge, and we have permanent uptime on Arcane Surge even on trash mobs. We used to only have Arcane Surge on bosses, or unique mobs, basically. Now we have it all the time, which is really nice. So in order to do that, we dropped Creeping Frost. Now, that's sort of questionable. Creeping Frost is still a nice spell, but I think, personally, I didn't quite notice it was gone that badly. I think we do enough damage already, and, the Chilling Ground's nice, but I don't think it's that big of a cost, but your miles may vary. What you can do is you can just keep it in there and still have the Arcane Cluster, like before, and be fine. But I wanted to do this because this frees up our second cluster slot, and which lets us use another one of the expensive CoC clusters, which is, another bit of damage. It's not a huge amount of damage, but it is like, I don't know, a few percent extra damage, which is nice. Since we are losing a bit of damage from swapping the gems out, every sort of small micro optimization like this, which nets us a few percent, is always appreciated. And one other thing this nets us is we get 10 always from this. And why is always important? Well, if you look at our flask suffixes, the Quicksilver is the same, the Grand Flask is the same, but our new flasks, so we put the mana cost craft on the Sapphire Flasks, because that's basically mandatory. But on the Topaz Flask, instead of having the All-Res craft, we are now using the increased Evasion craft. You can put like more armor, you can put armor, but you can put Curse Immunity on here if you want. Which I might do, actually. That would be kind of nice. But, you can do whatever you want here. But you probably don't want the All-Res craft anymore, because remember that the Topaz and the Sapphire Flask both give a lot of resistances in those two elements. If you look at our resist right now, you see I'm Omega overcapped in both Cold and Lightning, and that's just from these flasks. So you really don't need the Elemental Res suffix. It'll just be a massive waste. Obviously, the thing is, our Dying Sun does not have permanent uptime. It's a unique flask, right? Some of the time, unfortunately. So our Fire Res needs to be capped without Dying Sun, which it actually is not with the last build. So before, while I was making these changes, this swap made me have about 20-ish Fire Res. So the only way to really fill that is with, the random gains of all risks, like this prismatic heart node that, gives us 10 for free. And, maybe some other passives you can fit in. I don't know. You can fit some fibers in on the medium jewels and on the large jewels. But otherwise, you just need it on gear. Like, it's that simple for the setup. So I changed my ring out. I'm no longer using an unset ring because I just couldn't find an unset ring. Like, these rings are really hard to find. If you're, been trying to make this build, you'll probably notice that. No one really makes these rings. So you kind of either need to make them on yourself by finding a decent base or hoping, I guess. But yeah, I found this one which has a lot of fibers on it, so I swapped my unset for this, which means that I've also dropped increased duration, unfortunately. But dropping increased duration was what made me realize, or what made us realize that we gain a lot of mana from actually doing that. But yeah, so that gives us all the res we need. So we are still capped without dying sound, which is nice. And let's see. Another thing we did was we dropped, as you may notice, we no longer have the Thread of Hope. Instead, I put one of these really juiced up triple multi-jewels. So I've been meaning to drop Thread of Hope for a while. You might have noticed me saying in the last video that it's quite weak, and it really is quite weak. It doesn't add that much. So the only really good notables it got us was this Heart of Ice node, which is decent. Like, that's a decent cold DPS node, like that's 6% or something DPS, and then it also gave us this ES node, which is also like a good ES node. But these all came at the cost of functionally 3 passives, right, and 10 all res, or 11 with my Thread of Hope, which is a big cost. And basically, I tried it out without it, and what the end result was, if you just put a regular jewel in here with, you don't need a really juiced up one like this. You can put like a, decent, double multi ES one, which, that's just a few X in here. That's equivalent or more damage than the Heart of Ice node. And then the remaining 2 passives you can just spend on like ES nodes. So you can put you can take these 2 right here, and it's, it's equivalent, or sometimes, depending on your setup, it can be actually increase it. So that's really nice. That gained us 10 free fires right there as well. So, those are the steps I took to cap our fires again without dying sound up. So that's quite nice. And otherwise, you can see I took a dex node with my last level up. This is temporary. I just haven't been able to fit in more dex because we lost 15 dex from dropping the Unnatural Instinct. As you may have noticed, you lost this dex node and this one right here. So that's 15. And I just didn't have anywhere on my gear where I could salvage that right now. And it's quite difficult to fit in since our margins were so low. But yes, I just took a dex node for now. This is going to be gone eventually when I figure out how to fix that, but we can't do that right now. So those were probably all the in-game changes. Otherwise, everything looks pretty much the same. Yeah, all right, so let's hop over to Path of Building and we'll look over what we did there. All right, so you can see that our DPS is actually slightly higher than the last video, but this is deceptive because I've actually gotten some gear upgrades. So it's actually like, if we had the last setup of this gear, it'd be like, 70 mil-ish, probably a bit under that. So we have lost damage still. Don't think we haven't. But if you look at our calcs here, you can see that this is our EHP for Elemental. This is very strong. This is like noticeably strong. You feel like such a tank, and it's so worth it. I really like this version of the build because it's just so comfortable. Otherwise, since we lost a lot of attack speed by dropping the Unnatural Instinct here, we actually have space to get some more, right? Which I mentioned earlier, but we're currently sitting at 9.81 trigger rate with this attack speed, so we can push this still up to about 10, a bit above 10 actually, but close to 10. So I can still get like 1 or 2 more attack speed rolls, either on the cost breeze, which, as I mentioned, my current cost breeze is pretty much min speed. We're very close to it. So it'll be like upgrading your cost breeze to have some more attack speed. And yeah, that'll gain us another like million DPS probably. And otherwise, that's pretty much all we did. I think that's about it. But yeah, basically this version of the build, I think I would recommend it. And the thing is, I think for this version, you really do need the Hatred Watcher's Eye, which gives the flat crit chance. I think not crit capping without this might be really difficult, so it's up to you if you want to do it. I guess you would just have to take like some crit nodes or something. You can run a crit cluster instead of one of these prod clusters. They're a bit less damage, but they would give you some crit chance if you don't have the Watcher's Eye. But the Watcher's Eye adds a lot of crit chance. You can see that, or let's see how much we drop. Yeah, we drop like 15, 16 crit chance from just this. So it's going to be tough to fill up if you don't have that mod. It is doable, but you're going to have to invest a lot into it, but it's up to you. I'd say yeah, I'd say it's worth it probably, because I really like the setup. Another thing to notice with this setup is that versus trash mobs, the only real difference in crit chance is that we don't have Assassin's Mark on them, right? So we still have quite respectable crit chance, which we have like 84 crit chance versus trash mobs, which we did not have like before. Our crit chance versus trash mobs I think was like 60 or something, which was fine. I went over it in the video. You know, it still does a lot of damage, and still clears just fine, but noticeably it does feel worse. I didn't really I'd not experienced high crit rate versus trash in such a long time that I just hadn't noticed it, but this feels markedly better to play. Just the high crit chance, the higher, like the more amount of procs does lag you quite a bit more, but it does just feel better. But yeah, so that's where the build is currently. I'm still working on upgrades for it. I will say I really like the setup. Big props to Fubgun, who you know, brought this idea to me originally last night, and who worked with me on it for several hours, and that was a lot of fun, and we'll probably continue working on it. But yeah, so that's hopefully you guys enjoyed this version of the build. We can you know, together we'll make it even better, hopefully, at some point. But this is incredibly strong right now. Like, I'm pretty sure nothing in the game one-shots you right now, or I mean, if something does, it's very, I don't know, very obscure. Yeah, that's very good. I'll keep making videos on this build, I think, because I'm still playing it and enjoying it. So whenever any big changes happen, or, you know, I get some big upgrades or something, I might make a diary-type video, because those are fun. But yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully you'll also enjoy using some cast on crit shenanigans. All right, be back later.